Hello, everybody. I'm Bobby C. He's Edgar screwing up here. Edgar Burgos back at it again. Step in the arena on the Cruise Control Podcast Network in collaboration with Hard to Guard Media. My phone tonight, Ed, is the one going off since Randy tweeting out stuff.
Bob, we're live, brother. We're live.
That's what I'm saying. We're live. Yeah.
You got my name wrong.
How'd I get your name wrong?
Edgar Burr.
What? I didn't say Burgos?
Yeah, we got it. What's up? What's happening, Bobby?
It's funny because Randy just said to me to make sure that we have our phones on silent. And I think that I thought that I did, but obviously I didn't. So that messed up the intro. Maybe we should just do it over. I don't know.
Yeah, let's start it over. We're ready? Go.
Back at it again. Step in the arena on the Cruise Control Podcast Network in collaboration with Hard to Guard Media. I'm Bobby C. That's Edgar Burgos. That's a better intro right there. We got a great show for you tonight. Appreciate you checking in. It sounds like we got so many good things going on social media. I'm not sure if anyone's going to watch us tonight, but I'm hoping that they do.
Well, they had that Keisha Cole and Ashanti thing, but I saw some of it, and honestly, it didn't have the same effect like the other past verses. So, even though I'm a big Ashanti fan, and Keisha Cole's look was very eye candy today, and so Ashanti's always eye candy. So, but they're gonna tune in, step into the arena.
That's what I'm talking about. Whether I'm messing up the intro or not, they're gonna maybe follow us this evening. I mean, we always have great guests on the show, and there's my gold curtains, and you never know what jersey I'm gonna have behind me, so it's definitely a reason to tune in. Week in and week out. And plus, Ed, all jokes aside, I mean, listen, it's been some couple of weeks here in terms of the New York sports landscape. I mean, for the most part, January 2021 has been a good month so far, I would say, for our local teams. I mean, you got big headlines. James Harden, of course, traded to the Brooklyn Nets. Francisco Lindor traded to the New York Mets. Yankees, of course, re-signing DJ LeMahieu and adding Corey Kluber. The Jets today introducing their new head coach and Robert Saleh, who I think was pretty coveted on that market. And then, the Knicks have played better. We talked about that the last couple of weeks, and even hockey is back. And I think the expectations are pretty high that a couple of those teams are going to be good, whether it's the Rangers, Islanders, or the Devils. I think last year, Islanders, of course, kind of carried most of that, but the Rangers made the playoffs, and a couple of high draft picks for both the Rangers and the Devils. So it should be an interesting run of a couple months here. I'm hoping for better days in 2021.
Well, so far, we're in January, and the Knicks are 7-8, and they're still in the playoff hunt. So if anybody's excited, we know Randy Cruz is very excited. If you go on his Twitter at our Cruz, he celebrates every Knicks victory like the Knicks won a championship. So tune in. He's probably tweeting right now about the Knicks up 10 against the Golden State Warriors.
He's been texting me, so I actually made sure though to make sure that my phone was on silent now so that it won't interfere with our programming this evening. But listen, definitely wanted to talk a little bit about James Wiseman. I think he's one of the top young players in the game. In the last couple of weeks, you and I have debated who might be the front runner for the NBA Rookie of the Year. And, I think LaMelo Ball has been outstanding, but you can't overlook what James Wiseman is doing for Golden State. And that team, of course, no longer the championship team that it once was. They're kind of in full rebuild mode. But, they've had their moments so far, even with Steph Curry being kind of the lone guy and Wiseman being the up-and-coming player. I was pretty surprised that they beat the Lakers on Monday, but good performance there. Some late heroics by Steph Curry.
Well, they're actually starting to play well. Steph Curry's actually playing, he's having an MVP type season carrying the team. So, Draymond's had his spurts, and Wiseman, he looks like right now he has a bright future. Kelly Oubre has to step up a little bit more. But they have a good team. I mean, right now they probably, we're thinking like a 7th, 8th seed, if that. Obviously, they miss Klay Thompson big time. But, as long as you got Steph, you got a fighting chance.
Yeah, I mean, they were down 19 in that game against the Lakers and fought their way back. I think it was a pretty shocking upset to beat L.A. And, it'll be interesting to see if they can, do anything. I mean, again, the West is still loaded, even with, the high draft pick Wiseman. Like you said, without Klay Thompson, I'm not sure how formidable they would be come the postseason. But you got to give them some props, I think, for being able to, put put things back together after such a rough season last year. Injuries and then the fact that, weren't able to keep that championship squad together have changed the trajectory of the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to be fine. I mean, the thing is, will it ever be a championship type team again? And that's the thing. I figure, one of the things they might have to do is, trade Andre Wiggins and, on a package deal, maybe an Oubre and try to get a bona fide, legit, star, to get, to play with Curry and Draymond, because we don't know what when Klay comes back, what type of Klay we're going to see. Obviously, 2 major injuries in his career the last 2 years. So they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do in the future.
Yeah, we talked about it, last week with Baron Davis, about how the league is really built on stars. And, even though the Knicks are playing pretty well and kind of inching their way back to 500, one of the things that Tibbs has talked about is the fact that the Knicks, still could use a star. I was curious if you thought that maybe they might try to go after the Bulls star right now, Zach LaVine. He played pretty well so far this season and had a big game this week. I know he had 33 points earlier in the week. I think he'd be somebody that the Knicks should maybe target at the trade deadline to try to acquire.
Which player is this?
Zach LaVine.
Yeah, who are you going to give up, though?
I'm not sure who Chicago would want. I'm sure that the conversation is always going to be centered around one of the young stars that the Knicks have, but I'm sure they're trying to navigate around trying to keep those guys, whether it's RJ Barrett or Mitchell Robinson. I don't think they're going to want to part with Obi Toppin, but you got to give up something to get something. I'm sure they might be able to give up some draft picks. I mean, we've already seen that other teams have been able to mortgage the future without giving up players on the current roster. I mean, you even think about this Harden trade. The Nets won't have, basically seven years of first round picks they've had to part with in order to get Harden. So somebody like Zach LaVine, I don't think is going to require seven first round draft picks, but maybe the Knicks could give up some draft picks and a couple of guys on their roster to try to get him. If I was the Bulls, I would want to keep Zach LaVine, honestly, but it's possible that they could consider trading him. Right now, his stock is higher than ever before.
Yeah, I mean, the Knicks do still have Dallas's 2 first-round picks that they got in that Porzingis trade a few years back. So they'll have those 2 picks as leverage, even though those 2 picks won't be high first-rounders, but, maybe Kevin Knox or something like that.
Yeah, well, we've got our first and only guest joining us right now. He's live with us. We want to bring him in here, and he's the former Deputy Executive Director of the NBA's Players Association, former President, Commissioner of the Big Three, and then longtime NBA veteran, former New York Knick, Roger Mason Jr. Roger, how's it going?
Going good, man. How you guys doing?
Roger, doing great. What's happening?
What's up, E?
How you been?
I've been blessed, bro. How about you?
Hey, man, so far, it's, we alive, I'm blessed. I'm alive, I'm blessed.
Right.
Roger, I was checking out your Twitter coming into tonight. I just wanted to see some of the things you were putting out there on your social channels, and I really loved the tweet that you posted yesterday, New Day in America today. I just wanted to get your thoughts before we get into some basketball conversation about kind of this cultural shift that we're seeing in the world, and the swearing in of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Just your thoughts on maybe some of the progress that we might be making today in the world today.
Yeah, man, it just feels good. It's been a rough few years. No one president is perfect by no means, but this past president, as far as just being a divisive leader, it just feels good to have new leadership and history with Kamala and President Biden. But I also look at it another way. I think for me, I feel like God has a purpose in everything, and I think there's definitely been some positives with the previous president being in office. I think it highlighted a lot of things that may not have ever been highlighted. It's things that's been going on in this country for so many years that have kind of been hidden. And, if we didn't have the scenario, then maybe we don't recognize how much work we still have to do. These things didn't just start happening, over the last 4 years. So, I'm a positive guy. I look at the glass half full, and I think there's a lot we learned from this last presidency. And now there's an opportunity for, President Biden and Kamala to come in and really make a big change and make a big difference in our country.
I totally agree, Roger. I think 2020, I'm pretty sure everyone would agree, has been an amazingly tough year. And ironically, I mean, we're coming up on the anniversary of Kobe Bryant's passing in late January. And, I decided to honor him, even though, next week would be a good time as well, with this jersey behind me. I was hoping also, too, that you could maybe show your camera. So for those that are tuned in tonight, could also see. There you go, Roger. Good to see you, my man.
Yeah, you too.
But for me, and a lot of the conversations when it comes to sports, and I think Edgar and I share this as well, it's kind of like that shocking news of Kobe Bryant a year ago that really felt like it kind of started this spiral of a really terrible 2020. It was, nothing good came after that. And I just wanted to get your thoughts. I mean, it even surprised me, too, when I had gone back to look at that New York Times front page the day after Kobe had died tragically in a helicopter accident, that, small article on the front page about COVID-19. It was really nothing that we were talking about here in the United States at that time.
It was breaking up there a little bit. I didn't hear the last part.
Yeah, no, just talking about how at that time, I don't think we ever could have foreseen anything like the pandemic that we've been dealing with, of course, for 10, 11 months now. And it was basically a small little article on the front page that day with Kobe Bryant's obituary.
I think we're having some technical difficulties because it's real staticky.
You hear me? You hear me, Roger?
I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he Bobby was saying, like, it's the year since Kobe passed away, and pretty much, can you tell us the effect that Kobe had on your life and you playing against him all those years?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think first of all, to your first point with 2020, like I said, the 2020 was the year that we opened our eyes to a lot of things. And it's ironic, 2020 vision, we saw a lot, and it started with Kobe. It showed us how quickly something can change in your life, how quickly your life can be over, and how quickly kids can not have a dad, and NBA fans across the world cannot have their idols. And certainly for me, Kobe was somebody that we all looked up to, somebody that was a fierce competitor. That my days playing with the Spurs, some of my best competitions were against the Lakers, and the feeling you had when you played against them was unmatched. So it was just a sad situation, sad way to start the year. But it was one of those things that after that happened, like, you're calling people that you haven't talked to in a while, and you're like letting them know what they mean to you, and you're understanding how precious this life is. And so I just feel like God has purpose in everything. It was a tragedy, but I think it also opened our eyes, opened everybody's eyes to some of the things that's most important. You look at how his relationship was with his kids, not just Kobe Bryant, the basketball player, but Kobe Bryant, the father. That's what hurt the most. And it made you go home and hug your kids a little bit tighter.
One of the things I do know about you, you're a family guy, and you're a leader. And I've seen you in the locker room, leading, especially when you was with the Knicks. And I know you had a big influence at the NBPA. Can you talk about what did Kobe, when things, when you guys had a talk with the players, what type of relationship you personally had with Kobe when you needed advice, or, talking to other players and stuff like that?
Yeah, Kobe was a student of the game, student of the business, and he approached basketball off the court the same way he did on the court. So, I remember in 2010 when I was actually finishing up with the Knicks, and we had the lockout, and we all flew in New York, and Kobe came in, and he was like, look, Christmas is the date. Like, we got to get this stuff together if we're gonna get a season back. And he had a tenacity to him. It was kind of no nonsense. Like, look, we got to get back on this court. And I'll never forget, we were on the escalator. I've said this story before. We were on the escalator, KG, Paul Pierce, Kobe, and myself. And they were talking about, game-winning shots. Paul Pierce was talking about how many game-winning shots he had hit in his career. And so, the role player Raj said, well, in 2008, 2009, I led the NBA in game-winning shots. And so KG and Paul Pierce immediately look at me like, no, the hell you didn't. And Kobe looks at them and is like, yes, he did. And he's like, he hit one in Phoenix, Clippers, Lakers. Like, he named every one. It's like this guy named all 5 of my game-winning shots from 2008, 2009 to tell you the type of maniac he was. And the following year, he hit 6 so that he could say he had more than me. But he was that type of competitor, that type of just, guy as far as, basketball on the court and off.
I do have a question though. You now with players making so much money, LeBron and James Harden, do you feel? I saw this the other day. Do you feel like players, instead of taking more money, should trade in, some of that money for equity when in getting a percentage of the team?
I think the conversation that we've had many times is how can players get participation in the franchise values that rise with their participation. You look at LeBron, whatever team he goes to, that team's value is going up. You look at Golden State, so it's never happened. It's something that we've talked a lot about, and I think if you really want to call something a partnership, then in my opinion, you got to have a conversation about equity. You got to have a conversation because that goes beyond just your playing days. And so I've been a firm believer in, always thinking outside the box and figuring out ways to add more value. But I think, it's a great point. And I think it's something that this next CBA is something they should look at.
Roger, some great stories about Kobe Bryant. I feel like a lot of the fans might have forgotten about how great a player you were. And getting a chance tonight to talk to you a little bit about your career. And I think it starts, right at the high school level. Mr. Basketball in 1999, best high school player in the D.C. area. Went on to be a second-round draft pick in the 2002 draft and played really well at Virginia. When you look back at your career, aside from all those big game-winning shots that season, is there any particular moment that you're most proud of?
Yeah, I think I'm most proud of, I left my junior year. I dislocated my shoulder and had a major shoulder surgery right when I signed with an agent. I'm proud of the perseverance. I was supposed to be a top 14 pick. I ended up being the 30th pick, 31st actual draft pick because Minnesota forfeited a pick that year. But, for me, it's about the journey and it's about the perseverance. It was a dream of mine to make it to the 3-point contest. I've been a shooter all my life. And for me, that was like the pinnacle. It was a goal that I had, and I lived that goal. I lived that dream. Being a guy that was a starter in this league was a goal of mine. Jalen Rose, my rookie year, I'll never forget. He was my vet. And Jay Rose used to always talk on the bus like, you're not really an NBA player until you average over 10 points a game. And that stuck with me. And when I finally did get a chance to start and I made that threshold, it was one of those moments where I was like, all right, my OG told me this my rookie year. Like, all right, I finally made it,
Those 2 years in San Antonio, you guys, of course, get to the playoffs and face some pretty good teams, fall to the Dallas Mavericks and the Phoenix Suns. That probably was, I guess, during the course of your career, the best chances to maybe win an NBA championship. But you definitely played in some big-time playoff series. Is that best highlight in terms of team accolades?
No, actually, best one was 2013-14 playing with the Miami Heat and going to the White House to see Obama after the year that they won it. So I came the following year after they won it back to back. And just making a team, I had a non-guaranteed contract. This is a team that had won 2 in a row. They had another guy who had some guaranteed money. I worked my ass off that summer with my boy Justin Zormello, one of the best basketball trainers in the business. And I went in there and I took a spot, quite frankly, a spot from a championship team that had won it 2 years in a row that didn't really have a roster spot. So that's for sure one of my proudest accomplishments, and being on that team that had just won 2. We called ourselves the Heatles. They called themselves the Heatles because you had LeBron, Wade, Bosh, Ray Allen, Birdman, Haslam. It was, it was an unbelievable experience. And although we lost to the Spurs, and I actually got traded on the day of the trade deadline. If we had won it, I would have got a ring. But overall, I thought that was my best chance of winning the championship. It didn't work out, but I got to live like a champion because they had won the year before, and I got to go to the White House.
Good memories.
About the shooting contests you had with Ray Allen that season?
We had some epic 3-point shooting contests, Ray and I, and James Jones too.
And also, can you talk about the leadership of LeBron, D. Wade, and Tim Duncan? You played with 3 of the greatest players of all time. Can you explain all their leadership styles and what did you learn from them personally?
Yeah, they all have very different leadership styles. I guess I'll start with Tim because I played with him first. He's a very quiet guy. Not going to say a whole lot, but he leads by example, and he leads with his body of work. You come into the gym, you're going to see Tim Duncan on the gun, the shooting gun, shooting off the backboard, working on his moves like clockwork. And to see a superstar, arguably the best power forward of all time, working on his game like that, you can't help but want to do the same thing. So his leadership style was, quiet, but lead by example. And when he spoke, you listened. LeBron is a different cat. He's one of the kindest and most generous superstars I've ever played with. I remember my year there. I had a different pair of Beats by Dre almost every other week. Like all the companies that he endorsed, he's got something in your locker when you're coming in. He's a guy that wants to go out and grab dinner, have some wine. And then when it's time to work, I mean, the guy is an animal. I've never seen someone, put the level of attention to their body the way that I've seen LeBron James do that. And that's all the trainers he has around him. That's his work in the weight room, his work on massages, getting his sleep. So to me, it's no surprise seeing him, in year 17, 18, still thriving because I see how he takes care of his body and how he works. And so his leadership style is a lot louder, a lot more active, a lot more encouraging. He's a terrific leader. And then D Wade, I'd say it's kind of a combination of the two of them. He's not as outgoing and as loud as LeBron, but he's more active and more communicates a little bit louder than Tim Duncan does.
Roger, the league, of course, as we talked about a little bit earlier, kind of predicated, of course, on star power. So I guess all the talk here in the Big Apple lately has been whether or not this big trio is going to work out for the Nets. Wanted to get your thoughts on James Harden and whether Kyrie, Kevin Durant, and Harden can make this work. I realized the first couple of games with Harden and KD were spectacular. Last night, I don't know if you can count it, with Kyrie coming back, they lose in double overtime. Really strong performance for him, but I'm just curious what you think, if it's going to work long term.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's going to work. And the reason why I think it's going to work is because those 3 guys want it to work. They're at a point in their career where it's not about leading the league in scoring. It's not about getting another big contract. It's not about proving to the world that they can score. None of that stuff. For them, it's about winning a championship. And I think they really will sacrifice. I know all 3 of those guys very well. and I feel like they're going to sacrifice to do the best for the team. I think when you get into the playoffs, that's where your stars carry you. And to have three guys that can go out and get their own bucket, that's when it's going to matter, because you know what? You scout all these plays in the playoffs. So, having sets and this and that, all that stuff is out the window. The one thing that I would say is they're going to have to improve on their defense, which I think they will. I think they will. But if they can figure out that side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, I think they're going to be a problem.
Now, all three guys, of course, are known for being great ISO players, isolation players. You can make a case maybe in the NBA today that they're the three best ISO players, and now they're all on the same team. Do you think that is the case?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, James Harden has been the best ISO player in the NBA the last 2 years because KD wasn't playing. You know what I mean? So now KD's back. So it's arguably, I don't know which one you say is better. Then you got Kyrie, who is ridiculous himself. So I watched that whole game yesterday. I watched both overtimes. It was a joy to watch, and joy to see.
So if Brooklyn and Lakers on a collision course for the NBA Finals, you have your boy LeBron going for number 5.
Yeah, you know what? I think from a talent standpoint, and if you count on Brooklyn to make some more changes and add to the defense, yeah, I mean that's what it seems like from a talent standpoint.
Who do you choose?
Going for the Nets or the Lakers, Roger?
I would say the Lakers right now by far. They have a deeper bench and they've got size, but Brooklyn still has time to make some upgrades to their roster.
So one of the questions that Edgar had brought up a couple of episodes ago was just this whole idea about, whether or not the trade would be worth it depending upon whether or not they win X amount of championships. So we talked about it earlier tonight too. Nets end up surrendering control of their first round draft pick for the next 7 NBA drafts. Is the Harden deal worth it if the team comes close but doesn't win a title?
It's already worth it because it's very rare in this league that you give yourself a chance to win the championship. And so if you have that opportunity, compared to what might happen in the future, even if it's 7 years of first round picks, you take that chance. And so, whether or not they win it or not, it's worth it because the opportunity to win a championship does not happen often. You got franchises that have been around for a long time that have never realistically been able to say, we got a shot this year, and that's what you want to be able to say coming out of training camp. I've been on a lot of bad teams where when we come out of training camp, we know it's not a championship year. You know what I mean? So it's different.
Last week we had Baron Davis on the show, and he kind of, I think, took offense to some of the comments I made. Now, I'm a huge James Harden fan, no doubt about it. First episode for us in here, Step in the Arena. I had my James Harden hat on. Very excited about him coming to the Brooklyn Nets. But one of the comments I made to Baron was the fact that, again, it does look like Harden tends to fade come the playoffs. He took offense to that because he said, I couldn't understand how difficult it is for a player like Harden to have to go through all of those rounds. Do you agree with that, or you think that the criticism that's heaped upon Harden when it comes to the postseason is fair?
People, I mean, look, it's people's job to criticize. Right? Some people have a actual job that feeds, their kids and their family to be critical about everybody. And I think there's enough to go around. At the end of the day, the playoffs are a different beast. James Harden is a special talent. I'm sure James Harden would say, hell, I wish I played better in the playoffs myself to give ourselves a better chance to win. I mean, that's what all competitors would say. So, I don't necessarily see it that way. I think he knows that he can't do it alone. He knows he needs a supporting cast. When you get to the playoffs, it's not about one player. And so you need a team, you need to be on the same page, and you need talent. And he felt like he didn't have that talent, in Houston, and he has it now. So think there's a little bit of pressure there now, but he's got what he asked for, and let's see what he does.
One of the things I want to ask you is that, you got guys like LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and yourself, who are content creators. And I want to talk about, like, your vision. I know your business now after your career. You're building this company called Vault, and I just want you to talk about that.
Yeah, man, we've been building Vaunt for a few years now, and it's an exciting time for us. We create sports and entertainment IP. You guys know I was at the Players Association for some time and got a chance to understand group licensing rights and how valuable players are off the court and telling their stories. But at Vaunt, we also do music, so entertainment, sports. So I don't know if you guys saw, but our first big project was just recently with Post Malone. We executive produced the World Beer Pong League on Facebook with different celebrities. We had Chainsmokers, Quavo, Halsey, Machine Gun Kelly, and Megan Fox. I mean, we had a great lineup of different celebrities. It was a huge success, and it was a lot of fun. And the whole thing for us is taking these athletes and entertainers and things that they love to do, and helping them to create content around it where they can have fun with it, but also get paid.
We were talking to Barron last week, and he has a company called Slick. How difficult was it for you to build this company, and what are the, especially, you're an athlete, so you're connected, but, how hard is it for you to try to get, make it this household name?
It's very, very tough. I've done now 3 rounds of fundraising. We've raised a little over 5.5 million to date from some pretty sophisticated people. The LA Dodgers, their ownership group, Tony Robbins is an investor, David Levy from Turner. We've been fortunate, but it's been a lot of hard work, a lot of late nights, and just sticking with it.
You need some hard to guard in there, Raj. You need some hard to guard in there.
You got to figure something out, bro. For real.
So joined tonight by Roger Mason Jr. For those that are listening on other platforms like Spotify, when we have this in the archive, wanted to let everybody know who you are, of course, Roger. Wanted to get your thoughts, too, because, we talked a little bit about different stops in your NBA career, but you end up playing 2 stints in Washington. I was curious also about your time overseas, and if you could comment about what that was like, especially having been in the league and then going overseas and then trying to fight your way back into the NBA.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often. I'm actually writing a book, so I'll leave a little bit. There's a story behind why I went overseas, but when I first got to Greece, for me, I looked at it as an opportunity to get the ball back in my hand. I hadn't played. As I told you, I got hurt when I got drafted. Right, I missed my first 66 games. I was Jerry Krause's guy, and my second year they fired Jerry Krause with the Bulls, and so now a new GM comes in. And obviously, he wanted to bring in his own players, so I get traded to Toronto. And I spent a year and a half there, and the next thing I knew, I was in Europe. So I needed to play. I needed to get the ball in my hands. I needed to get my rhythm again. Had a great year in Greece with Olympiacos. I loved it so much. I said, you know what? I want to do this one more year. I got a big offer to go to Israel before it was cool to go there. And I signed with Hapoel Jerusalem, the same team that maybe 7 or 8 years later, maybe 10 years later, Amari signed with, Amari Stoudemire. But it was a wonderful experience. I balled out, and every day I approached practice as if I was in camp trying to get back to the NBA, and I was able to do that.
After those 2 great years with the Spurs, of course, you finish up your career with the Knicks, the Hornets, and then, as you mentioned, the Miami Heat. I was curious about that one season in New York, because I know everyone always talks, especially these years that have been a little tough for the Knicks, about the culture and James Dolan, and about how difficult it has been to be a Knickerbocker. Can you share any of those thoughts? I'm sure that's going to be in the book.
Yeah. It's the year that I was depressed as an NBA player. That was a dark year for me. It was a very, very tough year for me. Playing for Mike D'Antoni, um, Tony. It was a tough year. I took less money to come to New York. I could have signed with the Hornets for a lot more money that year, but I was told that I was going to have a great opportunity. I had missed out on a big payday in San Antonio. So, my first year in San Antonio, I averaged around 12, led the NBA in game-winning shots, three-point contest. Second year, I broke my hand, and it just doesn't go right. And so I missed, a big payday. Come to New York thinking that, all right, I can rebuild myself. They told me everything I wanted to hear, and I got here, and it was just a bad match, personality-wise. I'm coming from one of the highest character, best run organizations in sports from Spurs, and then I'm coming to the Knicks, who hadn't been in the playoffs in 10 years. I'm coming from
Different
a
culture.
coach that stressed defense, Coach Popovich, to a coach that, quite frankly, kind of got mad anytime I talked about how we did things in San Antonio defensively. So I kind of got put in the doghouse, and it was a rough year.
These days, a big topic when it comes to the NBA, and I think all professional sports, is this concept of mental health. What does it take for an NBA player to kind of keep their edge, their routine, and keep their mental health when things aren't going too well?
You want to be able to work just like anybody. You want to be in a work environment that's healthy, right? You want to be in a work environment that is encouraging, and you feel good going to work every day, you know. And unfortunately, at that time it wasn't fun going to work every day. And we made the trade that year. Carmelo came. When Chauncey got here, it got a little bit better. He's a great leader. And we were able to finish the year out strong and make the playoffs for the first time in 10 years. And when it came playoff times, all of a sudden I'm playing, which was just wild. So, it wasn't all bad. I made some great relationships in New York. Met some great people. Some people in the franchise were awesome. It's another chapter in the book.
Roger, do you see yourself? Like I said, I know your passion is building companies and you're an entrepreneur. But do you see yourself down the road as a GM or president of an organization?
Yeah, I mean, I would always keep that door open. I I worked for the Denver Nuggets for a year in the front office as a consultant. So I did all the pro scouting. I was at the Garden. You probably saw me at the Garden a bunch, Brooklyn games a bunch. Just I like staying close to the league. I like keeping myself up to date on everything going on. So it's not something that I would rule out. I thought about the Washington job when that became open. But I love what I'm doing, man. I love being an entrepreneur. I love being able to see my kids and take my kids to school and having the flexibility and being the CEO of my business.
Roger, if you had to put your GM hat on, would you say that the Knicks are trending in the right direction right now with Coach Tibbs, or what would you do to fix the Knicks if you felt that they needed to be fixed?
Yeah, I think they're going in the right direction. Honestly, I like what they're doing. I think they're obviously well coached with Tibbs. I think I like Obi. I scouted him when he almost came out the year before. I was at the A10 tournament at Barclays Center 2 years ago, scouting him. I liked him then. I like him now. They're playing hard, so I like what they're doing. I
How
do.
about Quickly? How about Emmanuel Quickly?
Him too. I was a fan of both of their picks. I think they did a nice job in free agency. RJ seems like he's developing nicely. Mitchell Robinson is obviously a hell of a talent. So they got some pieces, but they're going to need to make a splash here in free agency one of these years to really kind of push forward the timeline, because otherwise, you're looking at a 4 or 5 year timeline if you're depending on draft picks.
I suggested to Ed maybe somebody like Zach LaVine of Chicago would be a good move for the Knicks.
Yeah, I heard you guys talking about that. I'm a big fan of Zach LaVine. I just don't know if there's any assets that Chicago would want in return for him, given he's balling out this year, and so I feel like his price is going up, and there's probably some combination that would work, but then what are you giving away, right? Is it worth it if you're giving away RJ and Mitchell? I think that's too much. But I'm a big fan of Zach LaVine's.
Another point I wanted to make, I guess, about RJ Barrett, because I know he's the guy that everybody kind of feels like the team is probably going to build around. Is it tough to have your star be a guy that's, because again, he's still really looking for his jump shot. So to me, when I look at RJ Barrett, I'm thinking to myself, he's going to have to develop into like Jimmy Butler in order for the Knicks to maybe take it to another level. A guy that, basically is able to make things happen without having that superior jump shot, especially as a guy that was known for his shooting prowess. Can RJ Barrett be a star in this league without having that consistent jumper?
I think it still remains to be seen. You can't play in today's NBA and be a superstar, without a jumper. Now, there's one guy who's doing it, but he's 7 foot, Greek freak, right? It's very difficult. He could be a very solid player, but to be a superstar and 6'7", 6'8", he's gonna have to. That jump shot is gonna have to come around.
Yeah, just like last question, Roger. When you look back at your career and you wake up every day, what do you say?
Man, I was a blessed dude. I got 11 years in the NBA. I look back and I'm like, man, where'd the time go? It was an unbelievable ride, just incredible, and I'm very, very grateful. A lot of talented players out there. So for me to be able to last that long and have a career and have some really solid years, I'm proud.
And is there one moment that you've never shared publicly that you can share today, that you always remember about your career? One moment, a moment with a player outside hanging out, something.
Yeah, I think it's the moment I told you about Kobe. I haven't shared that, with any media before, but that was a moment that, obviously with him not being here anymore, like that moment was like, is everything for me, because to have someone like that acknowledge you, that was a moment where I was like, man, I really made it. Like the ultimate respect from one of the fiercest competitors in all the sports.
Is he best player that you've ever played against, Roger?
I mean, I played against LeBron in the playoffs 2 years in a row, when I was with the Wizards, and he was with Cleveland, and that guy, Cleveland LeBron, was just a monster. So it's a toss-up, honestly. I can't tell you which. It's one or the other. I might wake up tomorrow and say Kobe, and wake up Saturday and say LeBron.
You think LeBron has a chance to end it? Because he's still, I think part of the problem with debating GOATs right now is that LeBron is still kind of authoring the rest of this narrative. Like his resume is incomplete, as complete as it is. I mean, if he retires today, never plays basketball again, he's right up there in that upper echelon GOAT status. But with the same token, since we know that the narrative is not complete and that LeBron can still end up authoring even more greatness, is there a chance, because Ed talked about this too already, is there a chance that LeBron is right there kind of like on the brink of passing Kobe and MJ, and can do it with maybe a couple more championships, or at least another couple of really great seasons with the Lakers?
If LeBron wins another championship this year, right, back to back, and now has 5 championships, and somehow is able to win another one, he's the GOAT. more rings than MJ, and on 3 different teams, he's a GOAT.
And that'll be what, 12, 13 NBA Finals appearances.
Yeah, he's a GOAT. If he can win 2 more championships, especially if he three-peats with the Lakers, I don't see how he's not the GOAT. More championships than MJ, you got to give it to him.
You know, Roger, one thing that stood out for me, though, in terms of the debate, and even me, like I definitely fall into that narrative of talking about like Kobe, LeBron, or LeBron, MJ. Like we tend to condense it to just these players from this generation or last couple of generations. Like even when we expand the conversation, it's often Magic Johnson or players from the 70s and 80s. But with the same token, when I talk to some of my friends that are a little older, they always remind me not to leave out the players of yesteryear, which, again, I know the NBA was different back then, but it's hard to overlook when you go back and look at the stats like Oscar Robertson or like Julius Erving when he was Dr. J. Do you know, as a player that played in the league and you got to see, again, a lot of these great players that we just mentioned, whether it's playing against them, playing with them, do you reflect on some of the players from yesteryear and say to yourself that they probably deserve to be more in the conversation? Because no one ever even brings up, to me, they never bring up Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. They never bring up Wilt Chamberlain. They never bring up Bill Russell or even Jerry West. I mean, these are some guys that probably deserve to be in that same conversation with Kobe, LeBron, Magic, Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, you got to give those guys ultimate respect. For their era, they were the equivalent of what we're talking about. But you know, the thing with me is, you know, we have film and we can see, you know, what they did. And, you know, for whatever reason, that era of player didn't have the combination of size, strength, athleticism. They didn't have the sports medicine that, you know, we have today. So, you know, they were built differently, right? So like Oscar Robertson was a solid dude. Like he was strong, but he wasn't LeBron. You know what I mean? So like what he did was phenomenal, and he was the LeBron or more of his time, and you got to respect that. But it's very hard to when you start trying to compare eras. And for me, I just think era aside, we have never seen anybody like Michael Jordan. We have never seen anybody like LeBron James. So like those two are like they're like on a different level because whatever era you look like, you've never seen anybody like those two. And so that's why to me, those are the best 2 players, you know, that the NBA has ever seen.
Totally agree. Definitely 2 of the best players I've ever seen. And Kobe Bryant definitely in that conversation. And Magic Johnson, too, for that matter, in my lifetime, at least with these 2 eyes.
Yeah.
I know Edgar is a huge LeBron James loyalist.
Yeah.
He's going to be rooting for the Lakers, Roger, if it gets down to the finals. He's already trying to persuade you to vote against the Nets if they make it to the NBA finals.
Yeah. But look, Raj, man, I really appreciate the time. I know you're a busy guy and you're running around like a maniac. So one day, hopefully, me and you could connect real soon.
We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
We've been talking about trying to make something happen for.
Let's do it. It's 21. It's my year. It's my number, man. So let's do it in 21.
Let's do it. I appreciate you.
No problem, man. Y'all be easy.
Nathan Jr., thanks so much. Appreciate the time. Great job. That was a great interview, Ed. We finally got our act together, Ed. You know, we started out a little rough, but we got our act together this evening. I made sure that my phone is on silent so that Randy can't mess with my intro. If you're listening, Randy.
But Randy's
my intro.
Randy's a great editor. So
listen, yeah, no doubt. Randy Cruz needs, he needs to be kind of like wedged between us, I think, during Step in the Arena because he deserves all the credit in the world for helping us put this together. And, of course, on the Cruise Control Podcast Network, we got to give Hard to Guard a shout out to tonight because, Edgar Burgos, now the artist known as Edgar Burgos.
Now, I mean, Roger gave us some gems. You definitely asked him some great questions. And, it was informative. I mean, it's always great to hear a player who played in the league, especially being teammates with LeBron, being teammates with, D Wade, being a teammate of Tim Duncan, and just giving us some gems, and it was a great interview.
Yeah, like I said, Ed, I think people might have, I don't want to say forgotten, but again, we kind of talked a little bit about that at the tail end of the show when, players from yesteryear, they like once they kind of retire and kind of fall into view in the background, they tend to not be brought up in the conversation as much anymore. And even a player like Roger Mason Jr., who was a really good player in the NBA, maybe our fans at home might have even forgotten how great he was, even coming into the league. Like I said, top high school player in the country, Mr. Basketball, DC, Maryland, has a very strong career at Virginia, and then should have, like he said, been, a first round pick, but still makes it to the league as a second round pick, and then has a productive career and, played in many stops in the league, but was able to affect some really good teams. And I think most fans would remember him from that time in San Antonio. I think that stands out for me the most. I wish things would have gone better with the Knicks, especially with the team that they had at that time. But you could tell that was a rough year for him.
Yeah, I think, and another thing that we probably forgot to ask him was, he played for the Wizards those 2 seasons. He actually played with one of the most lethal players during that time, Gilbert Arenas.
Agent Zero.
Agent Zero. So, obviously he had a bad knee injury that, derailed his career. But, that's one question that, I when he was talking, I thought about, but then we just.
Yeah, but see, like, Ed, that's another guy. Like, that's a guy that, Hibachi at that time, that's just torching the league. Now, maybe it didn't last for 10 years, but at that time, he was a perennial all-star, one of the best players in the game. And, the young generation today is likely, unless they're really devout NBA fans, going to mention Gilbert Arenas in that same conversation with other players like Kobe Bryant, let's say, of that era. I think it's just so easy for the generation to tend to forget. This is my opinion, tend to forget about some of those players. I know for me, some of the players we mentioned, of course, even predate me, but I love to go back, whether it's on YouTube now or watch some of these old films on some of the networks when they show you the players like, Oscar Robertson, who was triple-double machine, or you get to see Julius when he was, Dr. J in the ABA. Even guys like Connie Hawkins. I mean, some of the players that Elgin Baylor that, from 60s, 70s, that to me are right there in that conversation of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah, well, I already told you who my top, no specific order. I'm always going to go MJ, LeBron, Kareem. And that 5th one is always tough. Can it be Kobe? Yes, possibly. But there's so many, other players, you got, Karl Malone, you have, Tim Duncan, my thing is like, is Kobe a top 5 player? You'll have to probably say, yeah, but my favorite Laker of all time is Magic Johnson. So
yeah, I think it was Julius that had, when they asked him about his top 5 or starting 5, he had Jerry West and Oscar Robertson in the backcourt. And this is coming from a great team. Now, maybe some of those players, tend to stick with guys from their era or eras, but it also had Wilt Chamberlain as his starting center and his all-time 5. And again, it is hard to debate. I know the league was different back then, but they changed the rules to try to stop Wilt Chamberlain. Now, maybe if Chamberlain played in today's NBA, I don't know if he scores 100 points in a game, but I know one story that a good friend of mine, Doc Stanley, shared, longtime reporter here in this business here in the Big Apple. He had asked Dave DeBusschere once if Wilt Chamberlain played in the NBA today, what he would, what kind of games and what kind of performances he could put up. And he said to him, he said, "You think he could score 50 in the league today?" DeBusschere said to him, "I think he could score 70 if he played in the league today." So again, those players back then would tell you that they think that the players from that generation would easily translate to the game today. That somebody like Oscar Robertson is just an all-time great that could play at any time in the league. And maybe there is some truth to that. I think you probably could put a player like Kobe Bryant in any era, and he would have been an all-time great. And maybe guys even like Oscar Robertson or Julius Erving or Wilt Chamberlain, if they played even today, they still would have been in that conversation for, greats of the game. It's so tough though, Ed, because the NBA is just totally built on star power.
Well, I'm going to switch it up real quick because this weekend we have 2 of the greatest quarterbacks of all time facing each other in Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. And who do you pick?
So, that's interesting and a tough call. I mean, I know Rodgers, especially with these disappointments in the championship game the last couple of years, has always talked about being able to get that title game at Lambeau Field, at the frozen tundra. But I think Tom Brady and the Bucs are going to the Super Bowl, my friend. I think that he's still got the mojo going. I think as good as the Packers have been, and they definitely, they're the favorited team coming into this matchup. They've got home field. They, a lot of people will say they got the best quarterback in the league. I don't know. I think it's Tom Brady going back to the Super Bowl. He's a guy that makes his living by going to the Super Bowl. So I'm going to go with Tom Brady.
Well, I know who's going to be more happier than anybody. The NFL.
The NFL, yeah.
If the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes makes it to the Super Bowl, it don't matter. You got Brady, you have Rodgers. Those ratings are sky high. The NFL.
I got the Bills going, man. I think it's Bills Mafia all the way. I mean, maybe I'm a little biased here in New York, but
you could definitely make a wager on that. We'll talk about
I think the Bills are gonna do it. I think they've got the opening here because Mahomes, of course, in concussion protocol. And I personally think Mahomes
today. So
yeah, he practiced today. I think Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL, and that's not a hot take. I know Rodgers is great. I know Brady at 43 is still very good. And we've seen a lot from Josh Allen this year, no doubt about that. I think he's got the best receiver in the NFL in Mr. Diggs.
Right.
And I think,
there's a guy called Devontae Adams too.
Yeah, Devontae Adams pretty good. Okay. But I think this year, and the great thing about Diggs has been that the numbers that he put up in the regular season, he's duplicating in the playoffs. And that's a team that won 13 games in the regular season. They've already won a couple games in the playoffs. And I know they might have benefited from having this last playoff game against Lamar Jackson in Buffalo. But, with the same token, I think everybody's going to be counting them out against Kansas City. It is hard to go to back-to-back Super Bowls. I think if Mahomes is not 100% and it's the dogfight that I expect it to be, I would not be surprised if the Bills find a way to go to the Super Bowl this year. It just seems like their time.
Well, for me, I don't want to see the Bills in the Super Bowl. I want to see the Chiefs, and I don't care who wins, Brady or Rodgers. And I'm happy.
Four really good teams, Ed. No doubt, man.
For ratings purposes and for hype purposes, I want to see Mahomes going for his second in a row. I mean, the storylines are there. You have, Brady going for number 7. You have Rodgers going number 2. I mean, the Bills is like, okay, were they going to go for the 5th time and lose for the 5th time? Man, it's not a storyline for me.
Well, I mean, listen, the last time the Bills went to the Super Bowl, interesting nugget here. Last time they went to the Super Bowl, they beat the Chiefs to get to the Super Bowl. So maybe we'll have, life tends to repeat itself, a little history.
Then they lost in the Super Bowl.
And then they lost in the Super Bowl, which that could happen too. I think any of those matchups, I mean, Chiefs-Packers or Chiefs-Bucks would be good. But I think with the same token, I think Josh Allen versus Brady or Rodgers would also be a very entertaining and great Super Bowl because there's a lot of people that look at Josh Allen and they're saying that, okay, year 3, this guy looks like the real deal. I mean, he makes plays. He's very much Mahomes-esque. He makes plays with his feet. He's got a big arm, and they finally put the weapons around him. And that team plays defense too, man. So, I think Kansas that they did beat them earlier this year, KC, but it was not an easy game for them. And I think the Bills are better now than they were earlier in the season. Just my hot take.
My hot take is we'll see what happens.
Bills Tampa Bay. I'm going.
Okay, I'm going Chiefs and either or.
And either or. All right. Well, you gotta pick a team, Ed. I mean,
you know what? I'm torn because obviously I'm a Giants fan, but just to see Brady going for I cherish greatness. I love great athletes, and you got a guy going for his 7th Super Bowl. That's something we're never going to see in our lifetime. So that's why there's a part of me that's rooting for Brady, and there's the other part that like as Stephen A. Smith says, that's a bad man over there, and you got he's great, and he's going for number 2. So you got 2 guys going. It's just. I'm torn.
Well, I mean, a lot of people pointing to the fact that Tampa Bay is not going to be able to perform in Lambeau Field, but their key players, their main guys, especially Brady, has played, essentially his entire career in New England and has played an awful lot of playoff games in really harsh weather. Now, maybe it's not Lambeau Field weather in New England this time of year, but I think Tom Brady will be very prepared to play in the frozen tundra. And, he already ended the season of Drew Brees and possibly his career last week. And again, Rodgers has not been able to usually get back to this game. I mean, he won the one Super Bowl, but the knock on him is that he hasn't been able to do it again. As great a quarterback as he is, and it's not just the quarterback, but as great as he is, he has not been able to lock up Super Bowl championship number 2. And I don't know. I think they lose. I think they lose in the championship game. And again, I think the Bills right now are the hottest team, in my opinion.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Next week.
Sounds good. Ed, I wanted to thank you, of course, and thank the fans for tuning in again. Step in the Arena on the Cruise Control Podcast Network in collaboration with Hard to Guard Media. I'm Bobby C. That's Edgar Burgos. And we'll see you next week.
Randy.
Shout out Randy Cruz. We'll see you next week, folks.
Next week. Later.